We're on a mission from God.
Wendy?
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of The Island on June 13th, 1980. It was written by Peter Benchley, based on his own novel, directed by Michael Ritchie, and released by Universal Pictures. To date, Michael Caine refuses to discuss this film.
What? Why?
Not happy with it.
Really?
He describes it as a paycheck grab.
He has about a decade of films that were paycheck films for him. Jaws 4 is among them, so his Peter Benchley works are not in his favorite.
I haven't seen Jaws 4, but I don't necessarily disagree with that choice, but I think this is a solid movie.
Anthony Hopkins was considered for the lead, and I can see that working just as well.
Yes.
I like Michael Caine here, though. Evidently, union rules prohibited DP Henry Decay or Henri Decay or Henri Decay, or however you pronounce this name, from working in Hollywood, and he was replaced after 17 weeks of shooting by Gene Polito, who went uncredited for the last several weeks' work. U.S. Coast Guard cutter New Hope was portrayed by actual Coast Guard vessel The Dauntless, which also makes an appearance in License to Kill. Conflicting information on Benchley's pay here. Wikipedia says he got $1.25 million for the film. That was for rights and the first draft. IMDb says $2.16 million for just the movie rights, but LA Times at the time reported that Zanuck and Brown paid $2.15 million plus 10% of first dollar gross plus 5% of soundtrack profits and approval of the director. That's insane.
That's a lot.
That's a crazy deal for him to have. But this was after Jaws and The Deep had both performed fairly well, and so he was a known entity. This was the third and final adaptation of a Benchley story to film. Shooting locations for the film included Antigua, the West Indies, the Bahamas, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale. The film garnered 2 Razzie nominations, acting for Caine and directing for Ritchie.
What?
Undeserved.
Neither of those make any sense.
Complete mistakes on the part of the Razzies. But go check out the Razzies website, by the way. Go look at that website.
You really are angry about this website.
I was venting to these two about it. I just looked it up because I was like, I'm just going to look historically at like what has won the Razzies. You'll get farther on Wikipedia than you will on the Razzies website. The Razzies website is garbage. It's the worst made website I've ever seen. Coming after you guys.
We'll give them the Razzie for worst website?
Yes.
Cool.
The Razzie for worst website. Perfect. We open with a wide shot of the ocean. By the way, before we get too deep into this is one of those movies where there's twists and turns, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you see this movie before you listen to our review of it.
Yeah, that's
Is that fair?
Good.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Because I think I'm spoiling my votes towards the end here. This is a gem of a movie. This is an important one to see for yourself before we go through all of it. So we spoil everything on this show, but occasionally we warn new listeners that we're going to spoil the film. This is a case of that. If you just found this, you're listening to this first, go watch the movie first and then come back and listen to this. We open with a wide shot of the ocean. We see an island in the distance. The movie's called The Island, so that makes sense. We see the lady, a fishing boat floating into frame, and a tourist is reeling in a kingfish despite his friends claiming it's a marlin. No, it's a kingfish.
Well, and also saying that they're doing the reeling. He's just sitting in a chair and just pushes a button to reel it in. Yeah, and they're all like, congratulations, and they're like applauding him.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that these are the characters of Doctor 1, 2, and 3 that are credited.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because
they're just rich people that paid a robot catches their fish for them.
Yeah.
It comes on board with a big bite taken out of the side, though, and they pass this derelict cruise ship.
Is that a Jaws reference? Or just a shark reference in general?
What?
Oh, that makes more sense because I thought it was weird before we got to any of the twists and turns. I was like, okay, all right, so something's down in the water. Something's going to come back. Yeah.
I didn't even think anything else of that at all. I thought it was literally just like Screw these guys. They don't deserve a nice fish. The lady passes a derelict cruise ship that apparently broke its back. Their tour guide tells them.
Mm-hmm. This ship is awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty cool looking. And the point, I think, of this ship is to cement things geographically to this location so that when we see this ship in the future, we know exactly where in the ocean they are. Because otherwise they're in the middle of the water and you have no idea what's going on.
And also later we'll get an explanation as to the possible actual fate of this ship that is only being speculated on at this point.
They must have actually found a...
Oh, for sure.
Like a... I don't want to say it's...
A ghost ship?
No.
A derelict?
What's it called when a ship runs ashore? Like
shipwrecked.
A whoopsie?
Well, it's obviously it's on some sort of
it's run aground.
Reef or run aground, sure.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's a lot of those in this area with thousands of islands to contest with. But their tour guide blames Faith for the ship being stuck there because he thinks, the captain was probably in stormy waters and thought he could handle it, and he couldn't. The tourists joke about his ruined trophy, this fish with a bite taken out of it. One of them notices a canoe floating up alongside the boat. Apparently this canoe smells awful, and they're convinced because they can see a hand sticking out that this is a cadaver in a boat.
He's like, is it a dead cadaver? All cadavers are dead, doctor.
There's a lot of banter that goes on with these guys.
It's great.
It's such great banter. This script is really good. I was like, Peter Benchley, you hit it out of the park for this.
This whole movie is dense with dialogue.
Yes.
It is difficult to follow at points because there's just so much talking going on.
But listening to these guys riff on each other in the background, like back and forth, like they're joking about like what kinds of drinks they like and what kind of drink is made in what location, and
talking over each other.
They're
frequently.
Constantly, talking over each other.
When did you start drinking gin? 5 years ago.
But so they get this canoe closer to the boat, and then suddenly this corpse stands up and buries an axe in the face of one of these three men. And they do a real quick swap from the guy to the prosthetic here. Yeah. But it's insane looking. The axe just goes right in the middle of his face, blood spurting everywhere. The second shot here is so much crazier because it's like he swings the axe at the gut and only catches him because he has a gut. If this guy had been, a little bit more diligent with his diet and working out, he would have been fine. This would have missed him. But it catches his gut and just tears it open and spills his innards all over the deck of the boat. And it's a really beautiful looking makeup job for this. It looks like he cut the guy.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's so gross. We cut immediately away from this chaos going on
to Gotham City.
where
it was on
she
the
pointed
truck.
that out.
I saw that. Yeah, there's a truck that goes by that says Gotham on the side of it.
Which
Sweet.
I mean, maybe that is they're literally supposed to be in Gotham here because they're only in whatever the city is for this one scene.
I just assume that we're cutting away to seeing the Alfred before he got his job as the butler.
Some men just like to see the world burn. Caine pitches a story to his bosses about 600 missing boats in 3 years near the Bermuda Triangle.
600 missing boats.
And they're just like, it happens. Nobody cares about it.
And sorry to linger on this for a second. So he's a journalist of some kind for some kind of magazine, but he's looking at photos of women who are wearing shirts that are very transparent. It's like, but the Sun is reading a Playboy. Is he a writer for Playboy?
Maybe.
He might be.
Okay.
And they're doing a story about missing boats for some reason. But
are they implying that the lore of the Bermuda Triangle is attributed to what we're about to see in this movie?
Yes.
Okay.
The boss agrees to let the story run so he can continue spot checking nipples and photo prints. Back in his office, Michael Caine finds his son. Michael Caine's name in this movie is Maynard, by the way. I should start calling him Blair Maynard. And he finds his son, Justin. Mom left him there, and he expects his father to bore him with museums this weekend. Michael Caine offers an alternative, taking him to Disney World, which
Maynard.
he calls...
Call him Maynard.
Maynard offers to take him to the museum of... What does he say? Like the Museum of Mice and Ducks?
Yeah.
Something like that. And
I think he did Ducks and Mice, which I thought was weird that you put the duck before the mice.
You got to make it sound weird.
Why?
You got to let the kid decode it.
We're talking evolutionary? Like,
No, referring to Disney, I would elevate mice to the top.
Or maybe he was going alphabetically.
What about the Orlando Museum of Famous Ducks and Mice?
The kid picks up pretty quickly that this is a job and that Disney was an afterthought. And he makes Maynard stop at a gun shop. And I don't know why Maynard agrees to this, but he pulls over and they go to a gun shop.
He's actually really accommodating to his son on a lot of things. And while the son gives him some crap, they seem to have a really good relationship.
Yeah, that's true.
I sense you disagree, Jesse.
No, I'm trying not to mention something yet.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know if I should save it for later or not.
Should
I delve into this right now, Jess?
No, we could save it for later. I'm making a slight face that Richard's picking up on because I think that the dad seems to be making up for a lot of things all the time. The kid points out a lot of ways the dad has failed him throughout the movie.
That's true, but he doesn't fail him as much in this movie. Well, I guess he does, because he told him he was going to take him to Disney World, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah, which is exactly what the kid calls out frequently in the movie.
Yeah.
Is, hey, Dad, you keep telling me that we're going to do this thing, and it's like this bait and switch that you keep pulling on me.
But what would you rather do?
He's always trying to make up for, being a crappy dad.
I would love for this to be the first in a series of films where he takes his kid to go report on a thing and they both like go through some insane batshit crazy adventure. But
that's what happened to Teddy Roosevelt and his son.
Right, exactly. Is that true?
Yeah, they got lost in the Amazon rainforest.
Oh, beautiful.
It's nice. Fight their way out.
But the kid makes him stop at this gun shop. The kid seems to be an expert in guns. Mostly through film, I think, because he seems to know what gun each character uses, like Dirty Harry and other TV show characters.
I find this extra disturbing in the 80s because there is no internet and there is no on demand.
So he has to look through a catalog and compare.
How are you getting all this information?
Yeah.
This is disturbing.
The shop owner senses that this kid is really interested in getting a gun today. The kid mentions that the Colt Frontier 44 is his favorite weapon, and the store owner corrects him. It's not a weapon, it's a firearm. But they head into the shooting range in the back room because they're allowed to test that gun here. And the regulars seem to be firing pretty wildly. There's one person who just seems like they barely have a grip on their gun, and they're just bang, 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 like just going crazy with it.
Yeah.
And the kid does a decent job. And the shop owner walks down to the target and points out his bullseye while the kid is still pointing the gun downrange. The dad takes a shot, Maynard takes a shot, and nails it again. And the store owner's like, oh, you're pretty good. And he says,
yeah, I was in Korea.
Which Michael Caine actually was in Korea. The kid bullies his dad into buying him a T-shirt. As they're driving away, we see him holding a T-shirt for the gun shop. And then he puts the shirt down. And then he pulls up the gun that his dad also bought him. At first you're supposed to think that the shirt is a consolation prize, and he's like, oh no, I got them both. Yeah. He talked me into getting both.
This is evidence right here that he's trying to make up for something. Just buy your kid a gun for the hell of it. You're trying to make up for being a crappy dad.
Yeah. They agree to keep the gun a secret from mom, though. I don't know how they're going to do that, unless I guess the gun just lives with Maynard. We see 2 more sailboats scooting past the cruise wreckage. A father is keeping watch for the night, and he's reading a book on the deck while his friends are ferrying back to the second boat. I guess they just finished having dinner or something. And this other family's going back to their boat to sleep, and he's going to keep an eye out for pirates. It seems like he's actually prepared for pirates.
He's got a shotgun?
Yeah. So he's sitting up on the deck, keeping watch, and it sounded like he told him to set an alarm because he wants to switch off who's on watch. His daughter is sleeping in the bow below deck, and there's this cool moment here where the lamp behind him slides across the deck as the boat is tilting one way. And I think the indication is supposed to be that someone is boarding the ship on that side.
Or hanging on it, at least.
Yeah. And that's what's causing it to tilt enough for this lamp to move. But it also works as just a shock moment of this lamp suddenly appearing behind him and freaking you out. And then suddenly there's a dude with a flaming headdress that just runs up and stabs him. Then him and I think other
there's multiple
additional pirates move below deck where the mom is immediately garroted. Ugh. They slice her neck completely open before she even wakes up. And the daughter is in a separate compartment though. So her door is closed and she's just confused and calling out to her parents. And then we cut back away from this. Maynard and Justin show up on the docks where the lady is supposed to be, but it's not here because that thing got axed to pieces.
Right. And we're hearing a pre-recorded interview that Michael Caine, Maynard had given, was conducting.
Right.
And they were talking about how that for insurance purposes, they never say a ship gets hijacked. They just say it just went down because it's easier to do that than to say it, because if the insurance won't cover it if it gets hijacked.
Yeah.
And because of all these missing ships, unless there's a federal crime involved, you can't go to the government. Right. It's just local Coast Guard and police. So
as they walk past the port where the lady should be docked, other boat owners are offering their services, like $100 for a fishing trip. And then Maynard says, if I'm going to pay $100 for a fish, it's going to come with a tablecloth and a bottle of wine. And then one of the guys pulls out a tablecloth and lays it across. And he's like,
hey, I'll do the same thing for $75 and throw in a bottle of white wine. How's that?
And he just laughs at them like, okay, you called my bluff. I'm not going to do that. We're hearing these recordings, and it seems like the interviews are different people using different explanations to explain why all these ships are missing. Because so we have the insurance one, and then there's also people saying that it's the fault of drug runners that these ships are getting shot down and the drugs are being stolen. But Maynard wants to go where these boats are disappearing. He decides he's going to charter a plane to get there. As they're walking across the tarmac to the plane, he says, what do you think of the plane? And then Justin's like,
the son of a bitch has propellers.
But this pilot is insane. I love it.
He's like one of my favorite characters from this movie.
And there's no wasted characters in this movie.
Yeah.
Every single person is a fun, interesting character. Like even those guys that were trying to sell their boats, like they had jokes and they had props set up and like they had a whole backstory and everything. And this guy has this big scar on his head that's never really explained.
Yeah.
And
although you can imagine it's probably from another crash,
yeah,
or possibly from when the pig bit him.
Yeah. So the pilot invites them aboard, and he tells them to pay no mind to this enormous pig in the back of the plane because it will be tranked for the flight, because you don't want a pig to lose its shit in the middle of the air. He puts a hat on the kid and tells him to pose as the legally mandated co-pilot. And he has this big scar over his right eye, and he asks Maynard to help him navigate because sometimes the clouds can cause him to confuse the islands. There's so many out here. These are all bad signs. As they make their final approach, someone tries to wave them off the runway, and so he has to loop around and make a second pass. And the guy's still there, so he just ignores him and goes to put her down when Justin points out, what does this red light mean? And he's like, oh, that means the wheels are up. So we're about to crash because I didn't put the wheels down. And they crash and skid across the runway, and it's a violent landing.
Yeah.
Like the kid's head is getting slammed against the metal back of his chair, and Maynard is just trying to hold himself in this door frame.
But Stark, the pilot, is going, yeah!
Yeah, he's having fun the whole time. He's like, what's his name from DuckTales? It's like Launchpad. Just like, all right, we did it. But when the plane comes to a complete stop, the pilot just jumps out of the window of the cockpit.
Yeah, he leaves
and he
them.
just leaves both of them in the plane. And Maynard is rushing Justin out of the plane. He throws him to the runway, and then he jumps out. And as they're running away, the plane completely explodes on the runway, killing this pig that was on board.
At least it was asleep, I hope.
Yeah.
But then Starks looks at the wreckage and just kind of shrugs.
He's like, okay, whatever. Maynard is lecturing him for leaving them behind. And then Justin points out, like, Dad, your gun. Like, we have to hide the gun. The customs agent is coming. And there's this customs agent from the island that's, like, racing up on a bike. And so he moves over to Justin, and he gives Justin a jacket and then puts the gun in his pants to hide it. So he's like, if anybody's going to get arrested here, it's going to be you, son.
Well, no one's gonna frisk the kid's crotch.
That's true. Well, maybe they will. These are pretty close to the Epstein Islands. The pilot overhears that they have a gun, and he says that he won't tell anyone in a very threatening manner. The customs agent eventually lets Maynard and Justin go, but he arrests the pilot as collateral because he doesn't believe that the insurance is going to clean up the runway. And he says,
I get my money soon, I betcha.
And then as they're walking away from this hut where the pilot is chained up, Maynard says to Justin,
don't forget to tell your mother you went to Disney World.
But they handcuff the pilot to a pole. Outside, the pilot is yelling about the gun, and the customs agent thinks he's just being goofy. And he says, there's a hotel right down the road. It's called the Chain Plates Inn. And then he charges them $20 for the landing fee. Even though they didn't technically land, they crashed.
It's a fine line.
Yeah. Maynard and Justin sleep for the night, and in the morning they walk to the nearby home of Dr. Windsor, who answers their knocking on the door with,
Begone, you Ethiopian!
Because he doesn't like visitors. And he says, the hotel said you rent boats. And Justin is out by the water, just exploring the tide pools, and he finds a musket ball, and then he stabs his finger on an urchin. And in the insert, it really looks like they're pulling a piece of an urchin out of a finger, or at least some kind of a prop, but it was stabbed into a finger.
Well, and the way the sea urchin moves and reacts to the hand looks real, too.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's definitely a kid's hand that they're pulling the thing out of, too. So it's like they might have just stuck something in this kid's finger for the movie. The kid goes to join his father inside trying to rent this boat. And the doctor, who I guess had initially refused to loan the boat, when he sees the kid, he's like, oh, I don't want to deprive you of a fishing trip. So sure, you can rent a boat, whatever. And he asks what he wants to catch. And the kid says barracuda. And Maynard kind of smiles because he's like, yeah, it's just because you've heard of barracuda being dangerous. And that sounds the most exciting to you. But the real reason that he asked what they wanted to catch was so that he could tell them exactly where to be and he would know where their boat was.
Mm-hmm. So also, the kid makes a reference to that your place looks a lot like Lex Luthor's place.
Yeah. So they head out and they catch a barracuda right where the doctor suggested. And Maynard is like whacking it as he's getting ready to bring it into the boat. And then he jokingly holds it like inches from his son's face when I'm not sure it's dead yet. And it could very easily have just slapped shut and bit this kid in the face. And the kid's like, let's catch another one. And he says, oh no, we should go back. And he said, but this one might spoil before we get back. And it's like, are you arguing to leave or stay?
Yeah.
Because if it's going to spoil really quickly, we should be leaving right now. But he wants his kid to keep having fun. So he indulges and he says, fine, we'll catch another one. They notice what looks like a small craft and someone overboard. And when they get closer, they can see it's the girl that was sleeping in the quarters below deck while her parents were stabbed and garroted.
With a blank smile on her face. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, she looks like she just got driven through an atomic cloud. Justin offers his hand to pull the girl into the boat, but she instead intentionally yanks him out into the water and tries to drown him. Maynard's not doing enough to prevent his son's murder here, for my taste.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He just kind of turns around in the boat and he grabs a bunch of rope and he's like, here, son, grab
the rope.
Grab the rope. Get back in the boat. Stop wrestling with that girl.
Stop goofing around out there, you two.
Yeah, and then they kind of like, they get further and further away from him. And I was like, when is he going to jump in the water and get this girl off of his kid before she drowns him? Then he goes to the controls of the boat when suddenly someone is climbing up over the side of it toward him. He runs back to their bags at the back of the boat and he gets Justin's gun and he shoots this guy a few times. The pirate dies as it's approaching Maynard, but as he's falling forward, he bumps into him and then Maynard hits his head on the boat hard enough to knock himself out. So he's unconscious on the boat with this dead pirate and the girl is drowning his son. He regains consciousness tied to a post at night with his son in the middle of this insane kangaroo court. The Lost Men, which is the adult Lost Boys, hold a bizarre impression of a trial.
Yeah.
And they're saying all these kinds of weird things.
Who's the party for the first part?
That party gone to a party.
Guilty, not guilty. Did you did or did you didn't?
Yeah.
Did you did or did you don't?
I don't.
Don't say self-defense. I defend. You did deed or you did deed. Not.
No.
How can I defend a lie?
They ask his name, and when he answers Blair Maynard, they accuse him of having killed Blackbeard, because Blackbeard was killed by a Maynard.
Yeah, but they call him Great Teach Blackbeard, like, not that his name was Edward Teach, but they call him the Teach, like as if he was a teacher.
Yeah. The pirates cut them down because they're noblemen, and he says, where are they taking my son? And he says, no son, no more. A woman walks in completely covered head to toe in mud and spits in Maynard's face.
I imagine it's some kind of mourning ritual.
Yeah. This man, he killed a woman's man. This woman wants to kill him for shooting her husband. They can't charge him with a death penalty because he's noble, but she's allowed to kill him because he killed her husband specifically. So only she can act out the sentence, but they tell her, wouldn't it be better to use him as a sex slave and have a noble baby? And so they cut him down and he collapses.
You make good fig.
Yeah.
The snoo of the Futurama
exactly.
universe.
Mudgirl mixes Maynard a green paste and spreads it on his head wound. We see Justin tied to a post with a rope around his neck holding him up and matchsticks holding his eyelids open. He wants desperately to sleep, but a pirate is feeding him.
This treatment that they're giving the kid, this is like a brainwashing Ludovico treatment kind of thing happening.
Ludovico treatment, yeah. He wakes the kid up the next morning with a bucket of water and says, "Say after me, no mother, no father." We cut to Maynard, and in addition to this green paste they've rubbed on his head, they're putting leeches on his chest. This weird judge character who had like really tiny cornrows just gently ushering these leeches along like, "Oh, go on, you got it." Oh,
yeah, Dr. Brazil.
Yeah, he's totally insane. They all are, really. And David Warner is here. He is playing, I forget John David Now.
Like N-A-U, yeah.
John David Now, who presumably would have been a descendant of an actual pirate named Jean David Now, who was in these islands in the 1600s. But I'm just going to call him David Warner so that I don't screw that up. And he intends to brainwash this kid into killing his father. We learn the whole plan here. A thunderstorm wakes Maynard in the night, and the woman who he is betrothed to immediately mounts him. The next day, David Warner brings the woman a neck shackle to keep him as a pet, basically, and to walk him around on a leash. Maynard looks at the packaging for the combination lock a few times, and she says, "You kill my man, make a good baby. He make bad baby, die a borny," which I'm assuming borny means newborn.
Mm-hmm.
But we get a lot of interesting words here. The kid, Justin, and another member of the tribe are practicing shooting. This other member of the tribe is a kid from the boat with the doctors on it. And his name is Manuel. But the two of them are practicing shooting, and Justin hits a few targets perfectly. And as a reward, he's given Le Terrible, which is a French gun. And he is asked to shoot this spiky gourd out of his father's hands.
And Michael Caine's character just completely trusts his son.
Yeah.
Like he's not like saying anything. He's just like, all right, I believe that my son can make this shot.
I feel like some of these choices might have been the inspiration for him being nominated for a Razzie, because he's almost not acting, because he knows there's no danger in what's going to happen.
Well, but he thinks he knows there's no danger. That's the key here.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that his son is just playing along.
But even later, there's stuff that gets really crazy, and he seemed to not be reacting to it the way that a person should be reacting to it. But Justin levels the gun, and he is able to successfully shoot the gourd out of his father's hands. But as the guy's like setting him up for the shot, he says, "You know how to stand still? Now is good time." But yeah, he shoots the gourd, it explodes, and throws this weird like pulpy flesh all over Maynard. And Justin walks up to him and he says, "Okay, like, here's what we got to do, son." And he says, "Look, if I wanted to hit you, I could have." And he's like, "What?" Like, he's very confused. And his dad calls them pirates, but Justin corrects, they are buccaneers. And then suddenly he says, "You make me sick." And this is where Maynard loses it, because he's like, "You're not playing along. You actually are friends with these people? What is going on?" Because this kid already believes some of the history that the pirates have told him.
Yeah, he refers to himself as Two Barb.
Yeah, that's his new name. And I don't know if Barb is a reference to the urchin stab, but he slaps his father here. You can see that Maynard is just like furious and he doesn't know what to do. But he starts walking through the camp with the woman in charge of him, and she sees a crab like scuttling into some muddy water, and she runs to collect it. And while she's doing that, Maynard is spying on this loot pile nearby, and he steals this small rubber like inflatable thing. Because he saw that she never set a combination on the lock, he knows from the packaging that the combination is still 0000 for him to escape. So in the middle of the night, he undoes the lock, takes off the neck shackle, and he sort of tiptoes through the camp. And Maynard overhears the lessons that they're giving his son, and it seems that these are descendants of shipwrecked or Shanghaied pirates from 300 years ago. I don't know if they make it entirely clear why they stayed on this island.
Well, and they've probably been either breeding with each other or kidnapping people to breed with and then killing those people so that just the babies are brought up in this society.
Yeah. It is weird, though, that they've been here for 300 years and haven't built, like, a single house. Like, they know what houses are and they know what boats are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why haven't they built any structures? They're just living in, like, a naked mangrove. There's nothing here. There's just, like, blankets draped over stuff, but it rains on them.
I would maybe argue that these islands have probably been wiped clear from hurricanes now and then, and they just don't have the materials or resources to build anything permanent.
I would also say that in the same way that there's a deterioration of the language that they're using, that there might be in general a deterioration of all knowledge that these guys have over the generations that they've been living there.
And their IQ in general, possibly, as inbreeding is causing problems. But yeah, so Maynard tries to swim out to sea, and he inflates the little flotation device he stole, but unfortunately he swims blindly into a pack of man-of-war jellyfish.
Ugh.
And is just getting stung to shit out here.
That is one of my biggest fears.
Like, it's bad enough that he's getting stung, but it looks like he's going to drown in this because he's so tied up in it.
Yeah, like he the more he kicks away, he just gets himself more tangled up in them. And that I'm so horrified of jellyfish, but also even more horrified of men of war.
I can't even picture you going into the ocean, Richard.
No, I don't. I don't go.
Specifically because of that.
Because of these things.
I would rather deal with a literal man of war.
Yeah. I mean, I've been diving before, and you come across these little jellies that will sting your skin as you're diving, and they'll be in these clouds, and you can't really avoid them, and so you feel all these stings on you. I can't even imagine what it's like to have
a full-size
giant ones just draping their tentacles across you.
But he manages to get back to shore, and he's crawling desperately up the beach when he's discovered by his woman. And a few other tribespeople stumble up behind her, and they punish her for letting him escape.
Yeah.
Because it puts their whole thing
by dragging one of the men of war across her.
And her genitals specifically.
Yeah, presumably
I think it's pretty
Is that
clear.
what they were doing?
Yeah.
Yes. They pull her whole skirt up, and they're dragging it between her legs.
Oh, I thought they were aiming for her stomach. I guess maybe.
I mean, they only show it draping across her breasts and her chest, but there's a lot of it hanging out of frame that I think the implication was supposed to be that they're rubbing it everywhere. And then at the end of the scene when they drop her, you can see that she's completely naked from the waist down. But she collapses into the water and takes as long to recover as he is taking. But apparently she doesn't blame him for this escape attempt.
No. There's a lot of scenes where they're like kind of bonding, like where they're collecting what looks like to be rocks in a bucket, and it starts to rain, so they shelter together.
I think they're snails.
Are they snails? Okay. I couldn't tell what they were. I
love the taste of these rocks.
That's why you picked this campsite, right? Because of the rocks?
A delicious-looking limestone rock. Nice bouquet. Must be a real vintage year.
And I feel like this was like another kind of like bonding time with them, like
remember
working
the
together.
time we both got angry ocean spaghetti on our naughty bits?
Spicy spaghetti.
The next day, she gives Maynard a shovel and tells him to dig a tree out of the dirt. And then she leaves him unattended and says, "Don't you escape now." And then suddenly Dr. Windsor shoots by on a speedboat, and Maynard makes a run for it. He pleads with Windsor to turn the boat around, and Windsor looks over Maynard's shoulder and says,
I thought you were going to kill him.
And we see David Warner over his shoulder saying, "She let him go again." And the woman leads Maynard into Windsor's hut, and he says, "Sit down, Fido," because he's playing into the joke of like, "Oh yeah, you're a pet here. That's so cute."
Mm-hmm.
This guy, Dr. Windsor, to me, sounds exactly like Alan Rickman. His voice sounds exactly like Alan Rickman to me.
I thought you were going to say he sounds like Dr. Moreau, in the sense that like he's created this. He's almost not created this society, but he is like
managing it
and taking a step back and just like kind of watching it evolve.
So he is a doctor. I'm assuming he is an anthropologist.
I'm not sure. because it's not really ever said what he's a doctor of.
He does talk about being fascinated with this living history that they have here on this island. So I would presume that he is an anthropologist.
Because he says it's an anthropologist's dream.
Yeah.
And that there's thousands of islands and there's no planes that fly over this island. And he's already reported the Maynard's lost at sea. So no one's ever going to come find you. And this is great. And you're gonna help them, purify their DNA, or rather unpurify their DNA, and allow them to continue. And you're seeing history right here, because he says this tribe doesn't have any viable fetuses, and if it did live, it would be an idiot. And then Maynard says, "I could see that." I just love that bit. The pirates take both of the Maynards on a raid. And here they are attacking a beautiful schooner.
Yeah, Windsor informs them of its approach.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this ship? And who are these people who are operating it?
Yeah.
Well, we find out.
Yeah, but it's this beautiful, it's all wood with these huge red sails, like blood red sails. And it's really a beautiful ship.
Really, really inconspicuous for their line of work.
Yeah, exactly. We have this pleasant adventuring music as they approach, and so the pirates they're firing cannons on this ship as they approach. The schooner's like trying to wave them aside because it's like, we don't want to crash into you, but the pirates just storm the ship and slaughter most of the crew. One member of the crew shows off some martial arts prowess.
Oh my God.
He tries to stop them, and he's doing full on Bruce Lee vocalizing and swinging his arms around.
It's super awkward.
Yeah, it goes on for too long.
He's also in really,
I loved it.
Really tiny.
I wouldn't cut a frame out of this.
And when he dies, I was like, oh, thank God.
No, I was very disappointed. I wanted him to be the hero of this film. But so he has decided that he's going to take on these pirates one at a time. And the pirates are also very sporting. They're like, no, back off one at a time. Don't shoot him.
Yeah.
I want to see how many of us he can get through. And he manages to completely destroy a couple of these pirates. But eventually one with a sword steps up, and he seems to be one of their higher ups because he's chosen specifically by David Warner. And he is able to block the swordsman still for about 30 of his 31 swings.
Mm-hmm.
But the last one unfortunately lands right in his chest.
You only have to miss one of those for it to be a problem.
But he gets stabbed in the chest and bleeds out on the deck. They find a drunk guy below deck who is very impressed with their get-ups, and he's like, "Oh, far out, man." And then they find the woman below deck who was on the deck when they attacked, but she ran downstairs. And they start to bring her up to the deck, and he says, "Oh, she got pretty stuff. We should keep her." Because they're all just drooling over this woman. Back below decks, they're finding these heaping bags of cocaine, and Maynard is trying to explain to his owner what this is, and he says,
"It's a drug called cocaine."
What does it cure?
Insecurity.
And I thought for sure where this was going to go was he was going to convince him that it was good medicine.
Yes.
To take
That's exactly what she suggested.
That's what I thought was going to happen too.
She's like, "Oh, he should just get all these people hooked on cocaine, and then they'll just kill each other." But the victims' bodies are all being thrown overboard, except for obviously the survivors are all lined up, and they raid the rest of the ship. On the deck, the remaining crew are read their official charges by the same kangaroo court system as before, but none of these people are nobles, so one at a time they're shot in the head.
The girl tries to escape.
Right, yeah, and she gets shot as she's jumping overboard, but she dies.
How say you for this prisoner?
Guilty.
And for this prisoner?
Guilty.
Is this prisoner guilty?
All guilty.
Someone notices that there's a guy hiding at the top of the
the mast,
the center mast, and he's basically pulled all the sails in a bundle around himself to hide himself, but they notice he's up there, and one of the guys says, "Oh, he's climbing to heaven, I'll help him on his way," and he lifts his gun to shoot, but David Warner's like, no, let's let the kid do this. And so Justin takes his gun and he brings it up, and Maynard's on the deck of the ship now watching this all go down, and Justin puts one right through the guy's forehead.
Mm-hmm.
So Justin just put a bullet through the brain of an innocent person on the deck of this ship.
Now, at this point, I wasn't convinced, until this point, I wasn't convinced that Justin was entirely brainwashed. I thought maybe he was committing to this role until he could find a chance to get with his father and get away.
You were like people that had only seen Force Awakens and were like, come on, he just killed his dad as a goof, right? Like, he's going to be a good guy.
But when he did this, I was like, ooh, if he's still just pretending.
This is super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For the future of their relationship as father and son.
So if he had just been faking it, you think he would have missed on purpose?
Yeah.
But even if he were faking it, he couldn't miss on purpose because he's already demonstrated that he is a dead shot.
Mm-hmm.
So
even on a boat that's rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
So this is the point at which you started pointing out some similarities.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and bring it up here. Hook is a shot-for-shot remake of this movie.
I was gonna say that later. I was gonna say they full on Captain Hook Neverland this kid.
This is 100% the movie Hook.
Yeah,
like beat for beat the whole way through the story. This is the movie Hook.
There's Toodles.
There's no way that there's a lot of the crazy pirates, but there's no way Spielberg didn't see Benchley's third film, right? I mean, he didn't write Hook. It was Nick Castle actually wrote Hook.
I was gonna say Peter Benchley's Hook.
Nick Castle.
It was a very different movie. It had nothing to do with Peter Pan.
But yeah, it's just, especially this scene. I was like, this is so much exactly what happens in the movie Hook that it's blowing my mind that Hook was adapted from this insane movie. Like it just was. Like there's no argument that it wasn't, because too much of it is exactly from this movie. It's like this angry present day dad who doesn't have enough time for his kid is a jerk to him, and they go on a vacation, and then the kid gets kidnapped and the dad's trying to get him back, and the pirates kidnap both of them, and then the kid becomes friends with the pirates, and the pirates make the kid do bad things, and the dad's trying to convince him to be good. It's just totally Hook. I can't get over the fact that Hook was based on something, that it was this. But it's insane.
To clarify, this is Patrick's opinion.
This is
it's
fact.
Not supported by any research.
But you guys both agree with me. We took a vote earlier, and they both agree. They didn't. But it's true. It's a shot-for-shot remake. Might as well have been Gus Van Sant directing. Justin tells his father that his name is now Tubarb, and he draws a gun on David Warner. I'm not sure why. David Warner and his father are standing side by side, and he points a gun at David Warner, and then at the last second he turns to pretend that he's going to shoot his dad, but he shoots past his dad, and then he laughs because his dad was scared. He finally showed some hesitation and got worried by the bullet going past him, because now that he's seen what his son is capable of, he's like, oh, you're not screwing around anymore. So they get back on their tiny ships and row away from the schooner, and we see this explosion rise from just behind the schooner, which is fine. I would have been sad if they blew up this actual real ship.
It was believable enough that I was like, all right, I'll give it to him.
Suspension of disbelief, it's fine. The pirates make some jungle juice with basically just rum and their own blood.
Oh, God.
And then they sort through some of their loot, and the girl tosses aside a flare gun as useless, and Maynard makes note of this. An old pirate can't figure out what the fuck a Simon Says is. He's just like banging on it, and it's beeping at him, and he's very confused.
Yeah, and Dr. Windsor is here enjoying the spoils.
Yeah.
And in explaining some things to Maynard about the culture. Like, he's like, they didn't kill me because I proved I could be useful to them.
Right.
It's like,
and just like they haven't killed you yet.
Yeah, because he's trying to prove that they're not just savage.
Yeah.
That they kill with a purpose, I guess, is what his point is.
Yeah. And he's also here. He's returning Maynard's glasses, which he says he found on the boat. And I wonder if that isn't supposed to be an implication of, like, take a closer look at these people. The fact that he's giving him the glasses back. But he also, as he's sitting down, he notices the flare gun, and he's like, oh, I see what's happening here. Okay, I'm going to take this with me. And Maynard hands his leash to his woman. He's just like bundles up the chain, and he's like, here you go, take me away. And she goes to the pirate leader and demands a wedding. Maynard does not answer when he's asked if he will marry her. He's like, do you take this woman? And he's like, doesn't say anything. And then she says yes, and they're married. Warner puts his arm on Tubarb's shoulder, and just publicly adopts him in front of Maynard. It seems like at the same time as he's adopting this kid, he's disowning Manuel.
Yeah, because he's a Portuguese Zambo.
Yeah, that's what he calls him. It's pretty messed up. All of this is pretty messed up. But I guess the final ceremony of this adoption requires the kid to drink a bunch of the blood wine, and after he resists it, David Warner just splashes it angrily across his face.
Never tell me no!
We see Manuel run away, and he raises a flag.
Oh, a sail on a boat.
Oh, he raises a sail. Okay.
And he's interacting with the boat, and you think that he's prepping it.
Like he's going to leave.
Yeah.
Because he's sad about having been ditched as a son. The woman leads Maynard back to her tent, and then she leaves him alone for a second, and Manuel sneaks in and says, "Come on, we're going to get your kid and we're going to get out of here because I want my dad back." Basically. I don't know if that's his plan necessarily.
Yeah, it is. He wants to impress David Warner because he's also been brainwashed. Or maybe not, because his life on the other boat wasn't all that great either.
No, yeah. And he didn't seem so shocked that pirates stormed aboard and killed 3 men in front of him either. But Maynard does grab his son while everyone's drunk and unconscious. His son is also drunk and unconscious. The pirates find the woman outside the camp and they say, "Hey, where did your husband go?" And she's like, "Oh, he's back in the tent." And they're like, "Yeah, no, he's not." And so they grab her for lying. And just before Maynard can leave in this boat that Manuel prepped, his son breaks away and runs back to his new father, shouting to him to let him know that Maynard's trying to escape. So he basically just lets Justin go. He's like, "I'm done. I can't deal with this right now. One step at a time." So Manuel stays with the camp, and he's basically counting on Maynard to come back and get the kid so that he can be son number 1 again. At sea, the boat starts leaking because holes in the boat were patched with molasses, which Maynard is able to determine by tasting the water that's pumping through the boat.
Yeah, so
Manuel was trying to kill him.
Kill them both.
Yeah.
He wanted him and the son on there to get him out of the picture.
Because he also tells him to go east, and the dad points out, he's like, "I shouldn't go east. There's nothing to the east." And he's like, No, just trust me. Go east.
Yeah. The pirates come across Maynard's overturned boat and presume that he drowned, because where else could he possibly have gone? Dr. Windsor says, "Nope, he didn't drown, and you've got his kid. He'll come back." And then we notice that he's watching this whole discussion from the high ground, like plain view of everybody, which seems kind of dangerous. But now, suddenly, there's a Coast Guard ship, and a rescue op seems to be inbound. Nope, they're just fishing up coke from the exploded schooner. And Maynard comes across this powder shack on the island, and he busts open a powder keg with a battle axe, like a double-sided battle axe, and he draws a line of gunpowder to a safe distance from the shack.
Dr. Windsor at this point is concerned about the Coast Guard stumbling on, so he says that he might go down there and do some recon, but also might try to steer them away.
Yeah.
But David Warner's kind of like, "I don't know if you should do this." But he goes anyway, but he goes back through the village first.
Yeah. But as he does, he also comes across this powder shack, and he finds this line, this powdered line, which I thought he was just going to kick a gap in, but he doesn't do that. And then when Maynard comes back, Maynard basically went and got like a bottle of wine to make a Molotov cocktail to light the fuse, I guess.
I think he just needed something to burn.
Some kind of a torch.
Yeah. And so he made the Molotov cocktail, but I think he was using it more like a...
just to bring the fire to the line.
Yeah, something that wouldn't just burn and go out.
Yeah. He gets back to where he drew this line, and he notices his wife is standing in the entrance to this powder shack. And we're starting to think like, oh my God, is he just going to light this thing and the fuse is going to go through her legs and just blow her up? And
she's got a gun on him.
She has a crossbow.
Oh, a crossbow, yeah.
And she pulls this crossbow up and fires it directly over his shoulder. And she kills the approaching Dr. Windsor, who he didn't even know was coming. And then she runs away so that he can blow the shack because she doesn't care. She just wants to help him escape at this point. And I think she determined at this point that she's pregnant already.
Yeah. So Dr. Brazil informed her.
She's like, "I got what I wanted from you. Like, you can go now," basically. The drug enforcement people obviously see this huge explosion and start to approach the island. A team of men show up, but they make Ken stay in the boat while they investigate. And they find this settlement with this girl that's been reported missing, sitting alone by herself.
Oh God, this is the greatest shot.
So these pirates just sneak up behind these men and just kill the shit out of everybody. They're slitting throats from behind and stabbing people in the heart, and they kill every single one of these guys except for the guy that got left in the boat.
Yeah. And the girl's just smiling psychotically, and the one pirate, Rollo, blows her a kiss.
Yeah. And then I love this bit too, because they start to dress in all these men's uniforms, and they put on their life vests to cover all the insane blood stains around the chest. And they move back to the boat, and they make Ken take them all the way out to the actual Coast Guard ship. Maynard tries to swim to the Coast Guard boat.
Well, he doesn't try to.
Yeah, he successfully
swims out there.
As they pull up alongside the boat, like there's a bunch of the crew of the ship are standing on the side, like talking down to them, and for some reason nobody notices that they don't recognize any of these people.
Well, they're like kind of parked underneath like this weird cargo netting.
Yeah.
But also, you get the impression that these Coast Guard guys are just kind of like, this is the most boring job in the world.
Yeah.
Everything is routine. Nothing new is going to happen. And
but
so they're just
they only recognize one person on the ship, and they're actually commenting on, oh, he looks so worried. Like, why does he look terrified?
Yeah. And there's a tarp, and they said, did you find some bodies? What's under the tarp?
And then some pirates pop up and start shooting at this whole line of Coast Guards. And is that what they're called? Coast Guards? The people? What do you call a member of the Coast Guard? A Coast Guard?
I don't know. A coastie?
A Coast Guardian?
Coast Guardian. A Guardian.
They're firing at these Coast Guardians, and the whole team of Coast Guardians gets murdered right away.
Oh, the whole crew?
They get up onto the ship and kill everyone on this boat. Like 30-some dudes all face down on this deck.
Like, the one guy sounds an alarm, and the people in the lunchroom are like what is this, a drill? Sounding an alarm right now?
And then Flamehead is running through the ship and just stabbing people.
Yeah, they're setting off like makeshift explosives out of some kind of like looks like propane tanks maybe.
They're garroting people too again.
Oh yeah, and that's the line of blood that are it's just, there's so much meat.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff with meat that I appreciate, but it's horrifying.
The pirate teams rush out to the front of the Coast Guard ship and take down the American flag to send up the Jolly Roger.
Mm-hmm. With like a Black Widow hourglass beneath the symbol.
Yeah. And they announce over the side to some of their waiting pirates for the ride back that they lost 3 of their men on this mission. Maynard makes it to the ship, and he climbs up some cargo netting to get up the side of the ship. The pirates are having a funeral for their lost colleagues. Then they start to move to collect and fight over all the crap that's littering the deck.
Yeah, they're on the helicopter landing pad.
Yeah. And while Maynard is kind of surveying the scene, we see David Warner basically takes Justin aside, and then Maynard finds a large gun mounted to the deck of the ship. And he gets it started and just mows down every pirate in the whole movie. Just chews through them with these massive caliber rounds.
I don't know how at this point he doesn't know that his son isn't among all these people that he's mowing down, because you can't really tell. He's just indiscriminately going back and forth along all the pirates.
He might have thought his son was a lost cause at this point. I honestly think after he does this, all these pirates on his deck are dead, and then David Warner comes out with Justin, and I think he's like, oh my God, this is great. I didn't kill you.
You're alive?
I think he's relieved here. I think he was just like, I got to put an end to this or I'm going to be dead. And then he was like, just pleasant surprised that his son is still alive.
Well, and Manuel had taken cover and was like, oh, of course, because you can't kill children in this movie. Thank goodness.
So he's behind a bunch of boxes of fruit or something, and that's enough to stop oh man, the pirates should just put boxes of fruit on all their ships if they don't want the Coast Guard to take them out, because it's apparently everything proof. So David Warner gives the gun to Justin and says,
shoot him, my son, and you'll know true freedom.
And this is where we get the moment of truth. And Justin levels the gun at his dad and he says, I can't do it. And then Manuel jumps out and says,
I can do it.
And he takes the gun and tries to shoot Maynard, but he can't get the gun away from Justin. And eventually Justin shoots Manuel in the face. So now this kid has shot 2 people in the face.
Well, and this is the exact scenario that Michael Caine had warned him about in the car when he first got the gun.
Right. Now you have to go to Manuel's parents and say, I'm sorry I shot Manuel in the face.
I think Manuel's parents are probably long gone.
That's probably true.
I assumed they were on the boat as well.
I don't know. It seemed like he was kind of like just their boat boy. Like he was just in charge of like upkeep. He was basically an employee of the...
You said boat, right?
Yeah, boat boy.
Yeah, boat boy.
Again, the Epstein Islands are on the horizon.
Boat boy.
So now Warner tries to coax Two Barb away at gunpoint. He's like, come with me, and he won't just follow his instructions anymore. Now he has to point a gun at the kid to get him to go anywhere. And so everyone moves below deck. David Warner ties up Justin in the engine room, and Maynard is trying to sneak up on them. But Warner's giving himself away. He's breaking all these lights to like, he wants to make it dark in here so that Maynard can't see what's going on. But he's making a lot of sound so that Maynard can keep track of where he is. And he's also making it darker for himself so he can't see what he's doing. So he just gets paranoid and fires every remaining bullet into this dark hallway that he assumes Maynard is in. But then Maynard climbs down into the engine room, and then he drops down on top of him with this huge hunting knife. The two of them struggle for a while. Maynard tosses him aside and grabs a flare gun, and Warner continues to swing this axe at him and keeps missing until Maynard puts a flare right into his chest, and he falls to his death over the side of like
some kind of engine compartment.
Yeah, he just drops down into this compartment. And so he's just, his corpse is down there smoldering because it's got a flare in it.
And the axe falls down right after him. I was like, ooh, man,
that could have been bad. You don't want to die and die.
Well, but I mean, I was thinking more for like the stuntman because the axe looks real.
Yeah. So Maynard hugs his tied up son, and the two of them climb up out of the ship together. And there's this like weird like comedy bit at the end as the helicopter is approaching the deck, and he's reporting back like all these corpses on the deck, and he's like, the bodies, I don't know how to describe them, I guess civilian, they look like pirates. And he's like, did I hear you correctly, pilots or pirates?
Pirates, over. Did I read you correctly? Did you say pilots or pirates, over? I said pirates. I'm not kidding. They appear to be pirates. They're dressed as pirates, over. 1377, Constate Portsmouth. Pirates, you mean like the old day pirates, over?
Like it's just a straight up comedy moment.
But we never get a resolution for Maynard and Justin.
Right.
We don't get any kind of like saying, no talk over the radio that, oh, there's someone on board, there's a man and a young boy. I assume they go back to the island.
Oh, I wouldn't have assumed that.
Because when Michael Caine first swims away from the island, before he swims away, he sees Beth standing up on the cliffside watching him.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, not that they're going to go back to the island to stay, but they might go back to the island for Beth because she's the only one left alive. Otherwise, you're just leaving her to die there.
That's fine.
I figure when the Coast Guard comes in and cleans up this whole mess, they're going to check the island too, and she'll be fine. I think they just got rescued.
Yeah, I think they probably just...
Well, that's the thing is we have to think. We have to think that this happened because we're not...
I, for one, am not uncomfortable thinking. I accept this responsibility. Anyway, this movie is insane and awesome, and I love it.
I have been talking about this movie all week.
I was telling Jess we should do like sit down with like all of our friends and watch like all of our favorite like hidden gems from the year at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And this would 100% be in there with Ninth Configuration and like just insane movies that I've for some reason never heard about from anyone.
But what's even more insane is that Michael Caine dislikes this movie, and it was nominated for Razzies, so clearly
nobody
other people didn't like this movie.
It didn't do well. It didn't pay for itself.
It's so great.
But it's also, that's another thing that I really like about it, is that it's like one of those going out on a limb movies. Like there's a lot of, it feels very Terry Gilliam to me in places, like Fisher King specifically, or like, and he does a lot of stuff with pirates too, and that are just all a cast of weird characters. Mm-hmm. But
and he's worked with David Warner.
it's just, it feels like a movie where the audience was a very small group of people that I find myself in,
mm-hmm.
and for an unexpected reason, it got a huge budget and very good production value. Like the cast was all great people, and everybody's doing their damnedest to make this an interesting film.
The whole language of the pirates.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I had to turn the subtitles on, but I found that I was like, oh boy, this is really interesting. They don't waste a second. I mean, the kung fu scene is like, all right.
I loved it. I thought that was a nice way to break up, like, and really, I think what they were trying to do is make this less of a dark scene, because the music by itself wasn't going to lift it.
But that's what I love. Like, it's like a daring pirate adventure, like the Seahawk or something like that. It's just like cheerful pirate music. I was like, oh god, but they're killing these people.
Yeah. No, it was really great.
The only other thing was, I feel like the last fight with David Warner is a little lacking, but that machine gun scene.
Oh my god, yeah.
I was like, that's all I needed. This last fight can happen, but I don't care anymore because he's won as far as I'm concerned.
That, and when they storm the ship and kill the entire crew of this entire Coast Guard ship, I was like, because as we were approaching that, I was like, something needs to happen here more than just these pirates getting gunned down by the Coast Guard. And they won the fight.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this went so much further than I expected. And then he found that gun, like when he first peeks under the blanket and he sees this massive gun. And I was like, okay, well, that solidifies it. Like, I'm done. I like this movie. It's done.
Well, because of all of his escape attempts.
Yeah.
And then the Coast Guard shows up. I thought, okay, this is it. This is the end of the movie. The Coast Guard's going to come in. Yeah. They're going to start opening fire. But it just goes to the complete. It was like, I feel so bad for Michael Caine at this point. It's like, nothing is going your way, man.
Yeah, it was super unexpected for me. I think I even mentioned that as they're approaching the Coast Guard ship, like, well, there's no way that they could overtake these guys.
This is such a dumb plan from them, and they just don't know what Coast Guard means, so they have no idea what they're running into.
Right, but they just do it, no problem.
Yeah, it was amazing. Our director here was Michael Ritchie, which is a really unexpected pick for this.
Mm-hmm.
Going through his credits, I mean, you have like the Bad News Bears in '76 before this, and also in 1980 he had 2 credits for directing the Island and a movie we won't be covering called Divine Madness, which is actually a documentary. It's a Bette Midler concert film, but I don't know if you've noticed this, listeners, but we are skipping concert films because they don't really fit the way we do the show. But later in the 80s, all of his stuff is like just straight comedy. Like Fletch, obviously, is one of my favorite films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Wildcats, The Golden Child is another Fletch that's not as great. But it's just such a weird. It's definitely an outlier in his career.
Well, and the fact that Peter Benchley had director pick.
Right.
Like, he had to approve the director, and he says, the guy who directed Bad News Bears? Yes.
Get him in here.
Sign him up.
Get him in here. Well, honestly, I feel like it needed to be someone with a sense of humor and knew how to handle a different kind of comedy. Because I do feel like this movie is trying to be a comedy in a lot of places. But yeah, Peter Benchley, obviously, we talked about before. This was the third filmed adaptation of a Benchley story after Jaws in the Deep. Obviously not counting the first 3 Jaws sequels, one of which had already released. The music here was Ennio Morricone,
mm-hmm.
which, according to IMDb, he has like 13 score credits in 1980, but a bunch of them are like actually in Italy, and so this was one of 2 American films.
Because we had Windows.
The second of 2 American films. Yeah, we had Windows. Actually, there might be another one later in the year. Obviously, Michael Caine here as Blair Maynard. He's Alfred in the Nolan Batmans. He's Austin Powers' dad. He was in Jaws 4, The Revenge, which I'm pretty sure there's a quote from Michael Caine where they say, oh, did you ever see Jaws 4? And he says, no, I didn't, but I've seen the house it paid for, and it's beautiful, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which that's obviously a sequel to another Benchley adaptation. He'll be back later this year in Dress to Kill, and he was also another one of his paycheck films was Irwin Allen's The Swarm, which we have yet to check out.
But he's acting for decades. I mean, the original Italian Job, Alfie. I mean, he's had a very, very long career. He teaches acting. He's just a really amazing force. In Hollywood.
And I think he was a really good choice for this character. David Warner was John David Now. He's Spicer Lovejoy in Titanic. He's Ed Dillinger in Tron. He's Dr. Wren in The Mouth of Madness. Winston Smiles on Briscoe County Jr.
Yeah.
He's a Klingon somewhere in space, I think.
Yep. Star Trek 6.
Yeah. And he's also the voice of Archmage on Gargoyles and Ra's al Ghul on Batman the Animated Series.
Time Bandits, he plays the ultimate evil.
There you go.
He's so great. He is amazing. I can't remember who did the interview. I want to say maybe it was the AV Club. Did an interview with him.
Did they talk about the island?
I don't remember that being a topic in the interview.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they run down like so many of his big famous roles.
He's great.
Yeah.
He didn't come back for Legacy, did he?
No, but his son did.
Oh, really?
Cillian Murphy plays John Dillinger Jr.
Oh, interesting.
And because I imagine they wanted to make more Tron movies, and so they were going to like set up Cillian Murphy to be, because why else would you cast him to be?
Yeah.
In this movie, which I really like Tron Legacy, and I think that it was a really good follow up.
Yeah.
I had some issues with it, but overall it was very good.
I know at least at one point they were planning on doing more than one sequel, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. Frank Middlemass was Windsor. This is the guy that I thought sounded like Alan Rickman. He is Sir Charles Lyndon from Barry Lyndon, and that was his biggest credit of everything else I saw. You give me a look.
Which one's the pirate that has the cornrows?
That's Brazil, Dr. Brazil.
Dr. Brazil.
Yeah.
So I spent a while thinking about why Dr. Brazil looks so familiar to me, and it's not because he's in anything else that I recognize him from, but I think he looks like one of the Muppet pirates. He looks like the Muppet Angel Marie from Muppet Treasure Island, so I'm just going to show you guys this picture.
Yeah, that looks about right. Muppet Treasure Island was also written by one of the co-writers of Hook, so they're all the same movie is what I'm trying to say. Don Henderson was Rollo. He plays General Taggy in Star Wars Episode 4.
Yeah, he's the one who's not threatening, but he's the one at the board meeting saying that the rebel plans have been taken and we need to take steps because we're vulnerable. And then the one who gets choked by Vader says, vulnerable to your Starfleet maybe, but not to this battle station.
Okay.
So he's clearly the commander of the Navy, I guess I would call it, as far as the Imperial
Space Navy
fleet. Yeah.
He's also a commander in Baron Munchausen.
Yeah. That the only part that I can figure he plays because of that voice is
the battle on the beach, or
no, when the Baron and Sally are on the wall. And he goes, "Gentlemen, don't you think it would be a good idea to silence those enemy cannon?" He goes, "No, sir." He's like, "It's Wednesday."
And then he rides the cannonballs back and forth. Zakes Mokae was Wescott. That's the customs agent that comes riding up on a bike. He plays Dr. Benjamin Awabi in Outbreak, and he's also Priam in Waterworld.
I believe that's one of the elders.
Yeah.
In the town with oh God, we just had him in Hiding in Plain Sight, the mob boss, the mob Don. Anyway, yeah, he was in there too.
Yeah. Brad Sullivan was Stark. That's our awesome pilot with the big scar on his face. He plays Sergeant Vincente in The Dream Team. He plays an executive in the movie The Abyss, and he's also Wanchuk in Slapshot. We have James J. Casino as Doctor Number 3, one of our 3 ill-fated doctors from the start. And he plays Sammy in Baltimore Bullet. And this was his second to last movie before Brainstorm in '83, which we mentioned was the film that Natalie Wood hadn't finished filming when she passed away. Reg Evans was Jack the Bat. He played the station manager in Mad Max earlier this year. Or Station Master, sorry. I think that's the guy
who's fixing like their car or something.
The guy when they're like threatening him when they're waiting for the delivery of their friend's corpse in a tiny coffin.
Oh yeah, that makes more sense.
William G. Schilling was Baxter. He plays a golfer in Space Jam. That's the guy who runs the gun shop. I didn't find any other credits that I recognized from him, but Jess, you were saying I know this guy from somewhere.
Oh, I totally didn't.
Yeah.
I do want to say something though, unrelated to the cast, but one of the cast is credited as Coast Guardsman.
Guardsman, okay.
Coast Guardsman is apparently the term.
I'm not going to fix that, but
just
if you were curious.
Coast Guardsman is the term, but I do want to point out that you can call them coasties. Actually, I don't know if you're allowed to. I don't know if it's derogatory or just slang, but people use that word.
The only other person I want to mention, and I don't know if it's true or not because it says woman at gun range uncredited.
Oh, yeah.
And this woman named Christine Page. Did you look her up?
I did.
She was like smuggled out of Cuba by her parents and forced and lived in exile. Like her parents didn't come with her.
Yeah.
And then she grew up and became a comedian, like a Latino comedian. Did like a lot of like script doctoring and writing doctoring, uncredited to get like Latino voices and things like that.
Yeah, I saw most of the other titles that she appears in were stuff that was like shot in and around Miami.
Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was like, I'd never heard of her. And it's an uncredited role, so I don't know for sure. We have no way of verifying this information.
Yeah.
I just thought it was an interesting life that she had.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have Stuart Steinberg as Hiller, and he plays an old janitor in 6 episodes of 30 Rock. And we have Bob Westmoreland, who was the charter boat captain, and he also did makeup on this and on Close Encounters and the 78 Body Snatchers and the Twilight Zone movie. And then the last credit I wanted to mention was Rod Ball, who is CPO Zimmerman, one of the Coasties or Coast Guardsmen or Coast Guardians. Pick your poison. He plays Steve in both of the Porky's movies. But yeah, that's everything for the cast here. Did you guys have any other notes you wanted to bring up? Or I love this movie. This is a big thumbs up for me. Absolutely 100%. Jess?
Yeah, I would recommend this to everybody.
Richard?
I wholeheartedly recommend this movie. It was, I could not believe what I was watching. And like I said, I was super excited to tell everyone at work, I watched this crazy movie over the weekend. I got to tell you all about it.
Yeah.
It was just such a ray of sunshine.
It's really wonderful. Where's this going on your list, Richard?
This is going in the big number 4. This is going just below 9th configuration and just above where the buffalo roam.
All right. Jess, where's this going for you?
All right, I'm putting this pretty high, not quite as high as Richard. I'm putting this in 7th place. Just above Night of the Juggler and below Forbidden Zone.
For me, this is going in 4th also, which puts it behind The Shining, Forbidden Zone, and Empire Strikes Back. Then this, and then The Changeling is right underneath it. But this was a fascinating ride for me. I'm excited to watch it again. I'm excited to show it to people. This was an incredible movie, and the reputation that it has is 100% undeserved. I think it's insane that anyone could watch this movie and come away disappointed, because it's just fascinating and exhilarating the whole way through. I think that's everything we have for this one. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share with us, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd, where, as I've said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. We can also be found at vintagevideopodcast.com. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show, and if you take the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can support the show through patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Roadie, which IMDb describes like so. A young Texas good old boy has a knack with electronic equipment, and that talent gets him a job as a roadie with a raucous traveling rock and roll show. Which sounds like it could be a sequel to Fame, that guy that has all the electronic equipment. But it's not. It's Roadie. We leave you now with a trailer for Roadie.
Roadie, starring Meatloaf as Travis W. Redfish.
That woman thinks I'm some guy named Roadie.
Redfish can fix it.
Get me 2 beers and a hubcap.
Redfish can fix anything.
I need a Ford.
Why, he's the best roadie in the whole world.
The bands make it rock, but the roadies make it roll.
Roadie, starring Meatloaf, Art Carney.
Hi, everybody.
Khaki Hunter.
I'm a groupie on my way to New York City to become the greatest groupie that ever lived.
Roadie, you got the right idea. But I love outlaws.
Blondie. Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper, she's one of Charlie's Angels. Get him.
Roadie, the ultimate rock and roll fantasy.
He's a champion, the Ali of roadies.
In a rock and roll car or a rock and roll bar, he's the closest thing there is to a rock and roll star.
Strange and wondrous tale, baby. Strange and wondrous.
roadies. The bands make it rock, but the roadies make it roll.
Thank you very much, and good night.